everybody. Welcome back to the Your Project Shepherd Construction Podcast. As we say every time, we teach that every successful project has 4 key components demonstrated by this simple drawing of a house. The bottom line, the foundation, is proper planning. The left wall is your team, the right wall is communication, and the roof that protects it all is proper execution. Have all 4 of these components in place, and your project is going to succeed. So here on the podcast, we teach about the right way to undertake projects, which has been the big focus of our podcast for the past 3 seasons. But this season, we're mixing in some design topics and talking about design trends. In our last episode, we had a panel of interior designers. And so today, I'm super excited to kind of stick with that theme. And today, I've got a team of building designers and architects with me today. So I would like to welcome David Cox with Design DCA, who's sitting here to my left, Bryce Conner with B Ingenious Designs, who's sitting across from me, and Brinn Miracle with ArchiTangent. So thanks for being here, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Appreciate the invite.
So why don't each of you, let's just go around, start with Brandon, go around the table, and each of you kind of tell me, again, the name of your company, kind of restate that, and tell me what you focus on, what kind of projects you do, and a little history about you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll kick it off then. So again, Brinn Miracle, ArchiTangent is the company. So I'm a little bit of a crossover, I guess, from your last episode because I'm actually an interior designer and an architect. So I get a little bit of both worlds there. My company started about 5 years ago, and we've been focused primarily probably 80% or so on actually commercial projects. That's kind of where my bread and butter has been over my career. And we're now taking on, select high-end residences, and just finished my personal home was on the AIA home tour this past fall. And so that's kind of the launching pad for the residential component of the business. And so I'm really excited to see where that goes for us.
And her house is fantastic. I walked through it before it was done, but man, it's really something. And I think there's some pictures of that on your website,
yeah,
right?
You can go to the website architangent.com and check that out there.
Yeah, it's awesome. Bryce?
So Bryce Conner, principal architect at B Ingenious Designs. We started about 2019, and then COVID happened in 2020. But actually, it was crazy. Houston was still kind of booming as far as construction during COVID. So, we was able to kind of make our way through that process. And but our background, we have about 4 employees right now. We focus on high-end residential. We do townhomes, and we also do some commercial work. A lot of build outs, restaurants, high-end restaurants. We also do a lot of high-end residential that we do at West University, Bel Air, River Oaks. And then we do also do single-family homes for new developers as well.
Cool. David, you're aside from me, the other older guy at the table. So.
Definitely is. David Cox, Design DCA. We were founded in 2006, so doing this quite a while. We focus strictly on residential, mid to high end. Virtually all of it is inside the Beltway. We get the occasional acreage property, occasional hill country property, but a lot of infill, West U, similar as you, Bel Air, some River Oaks, Tanglewood, etc. We actually do a lot of builder spec home design in various price ranges. So we always kind of have that mindset of what's going to appeal to the broadest audience, what's going to cast a wide net.
Cool. Today's topic is kind of architectural design trends, and so we'll talk a little bit about interior stuff. But when people think about architecture, I think in their mind they're envisioning the outside of the house, although it's really both, right? It's outside and inside. So I'd like to start talking about exteriors and exterior styles and things like that. So kind of like on our last episode with the interior folks that we had on, we touched on exteriors as well. One thing I said to them was that when I started building 20 years ago, at least this market, Houston, was a very traditional market. Even like new construction, you saw like a lot of like Mediterranean stuff. You saw a lot of traditional brick homes, and it seemed, and back then it was almost like modern was almost like a dirty word. It's like, ooh, modern's cold But it seems like over the last 20 years that the design trends have really kind of shifted to be more modern. So even if it's not like, quote unquote modern, like hard modern, you're still seeing a lot of those design elements being incorporated. David, let's just start with you. Do you agree with that? And what's your take on that?
100% agree. And actually, when I started in Houston in 2002, I was primarily in the townhome industry, and it was kind of, I think, a little more accepting of modern at that time than the single family realm was. And it's grown and become more prevalent in the single family, uh, even in the upscale market. A vast majority of the homes we do kind of fall in that transitional modern category where it's a blend, a mix of some, traditional architectural forms, but then streamlined and open concept, et cetera, to modernize.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that's, really similar to some of the projects that we've started taking on. Is that, like you said, the form is very much a simplification of something that's traditional, right? So if you have a gable roof, it's not going to have a lot of ornamentation or a lot of pieces that are added on. It's just the
Exactly.
form itself, and then really clean joinery
It's
and
more
things.
pure, it seems like.
And yeah, exactly. As far as the modern design, I think more so people are geared towards transitional. I think we have a lot of people who, I guess don't want to have office building type designs more so. I've heard that a couple of times.
Hmm.
So, the traditional transitional side with the gables and the, modern features of the home. I think more people like that versus just straight modern. But we've been blessed to get projects on both phases.
Yeah. Why do y'all think that is? I mean, is that a function of, and I'm not sure if that's just exclusively a Houston phenomenon. I mean, I've seen it in Austin as well. Do you think it has to do with the international community coming to Houston? Because, internationally, I think modern architecture has been more popular. And do you think that's a function of those people coming here to Houston and Austin and causing that transition?
I would say so. I mean, we're the most ethnically diverse city in the US, and it's continuing that trend, obviously. I would say we're probably 5 years, maybe more behind Europe in terms of, cutting edge design and solutions like that. And so as that starts to trickle in from across the pond, then people say, oh, well, I didn't know you could do that. And I think now, especially that, people traveling more as just, a leisure activity rather than, hey, it's, that time of year, got to take my vacation. Let's go somewhere. It's like, that's just, you go and you see more. You can start to see how other cultures and other places in the world are doing things. And it feels like as a culture, as a society, we want to kind of embrace that a bit more. And I also think that, when we talk about modern, when modernism started, as the, post-industrial revolution and, the whole idea of machinery and all of that kind of this industrialized design where the house is a machine for living and that whole concept, it's like, well, yeah, that was really stark and bare and not welcoming. And who would want to live in that? Nobody, of course. But, as people start to realize it doesn't have to be that way, I think they're going to embrace it more. I think the challenge, though, is that it's really difficult to do modern well. A lot of times it takes a lot more precision, a lot more care, sometimes more money. And a lot of people don't realize it. And so they'll see a bad example of modern and then make their decision and their judgment based on, a terrible example. And so I think
Exactly.
it's up to the folks, like us in this room to say, here's how you do it well. Here's how you do it um, in a way that's sensitive to the context. It's not just a big, white box with nothing in it, and I think the interiors are going to be a huge part of that. So I know your last show was all about the interior design. And so thinking of a home as a holistic space, right? It's not just the pretty box, the jewel box that we kind of focus on. It's also the tactile experience, right? Like what are we going to touch and feel and what are we going to experience, like even sights and sounds and smells. And when we start to really think about that holistically, I think that's where people will start to embrace it.
Mm.
I think people are looking for like they really appreciate the simplicity of the modern design. Obviously, we've had an influx of people from California. The Austin market is booming now. Then we've also seen a lot of people from New York and Baltimore. Obviously for tax purposes, probably coming out here to
Right.
Texas. So we have this, and I think especially for the younger professional people, as far as clientele, I think they're more so geared towards just seeing something different, new from what they're accustomed to back home. And I think as far as modern design, that's definitely something that a lot of people are gearing towards. As far as the simplicity of the materials inside the home. One thing that we try to do to eliminate the feeling of the homes being cold is insert like the wood elements. That's one thing that's a powerful tone that you're able to kind of sneak that in and have the wood accents to kind of tie everything together. And then I think the large windows, the daylight, I think that's really attractive to people. Window design is a big topic as far as our design process with a lot of our clients. So that's what we've been seeing a lot more of as of late.
I think the big glass is also big. One of the reasons that modern design can cost more too. You get a a modern home, or even a transitional home with a lot of modern elements, you got a lot of glass, a lot of glazing on the house. You could easily have $150,000 worth of glass in a house.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Whereas
Very
maybe the
quickly.
same square footage traditional house might have $30,000 worth of glass in it.
Yeah,
Most definitely.
absolutely. I think, something else, kind of going back to that original question of like, why are people going with like the gable modern or the interpretation of, traditional style in that modern way? Maybe that familiarity of what the material is, like you were saying, Bryce, with the wood, right? And it's just like, it's something that we inherently are drawn to. It's that warm feeling. It's something that we're used to. And so maybe it's just the application is different, right? So we take the
Right.
same materials, we take the brick, but industrial modern is super popular, right? And we take the wood and we put it in there, and now that kind of farmhouse modern is super popular, right? So take the thing we know, slightly modify it, give it a fresh kind of take on how we use the material, and I think that's going to pull more people over to the modern side, so
Right.
to speak.
We're actually getting, with Instagram popularity, Pinterest, etc. We're getting some outreach for our designs with modern flair from kind of unexpected places. Having grown up in the Midwest, I have connections in Missouri, Oklahoma, etc. And we're doing 2 or 3 projects that have come kind of through friends of friends that have found our Instagram through a recommendation and really like it. And it's not like anything they get in that area. So I think it's also just a desire sometimes to have something new and fresh that not everyone else has.
I think the influence of Instagram and Pinterest and House and all that stuff too, has just brought more awareness to different styles. I think 20 years ago, before all those things existed, people just kind of saw what was in their neighborhood, and
Yeah.
they saw traditional. They're like, oh, this is what I want because this is kind of what's around me. And so I think with the advent of all the social media and the photo websites, again, Pinterest and
Mhm.
House, where people are posting just pictures of really cool houses, I think lights go off in people's heads. They're like, oh, I can have that. And
Yeah,
that
yeah.
does look cool. Like I've always thought that modern, maybe they're always thinking that modern was like 1950s, mid-century modern, which is also
Which is
cool.
great.
But maybe that was their thought of quote unquote modern. And they're like, hey, I like that element that I'm seeing here. Let's incorporate that.
No,
Right.
I think you're spot on. Now that we have digital media, you don't have to rely on the 2 or 3 projects that were published in, a magazine. And that's, I remember clipping stuff as a kid and saying like, oh, this is a really cool design. But now, like you said, we have everything at our fingertips, and we can look at, Bob down the street and Jill over there, and they all have these different, pictures that they put up. And it's, you can kind of take inspiration from around the world.
Well, I think that people probably thought some of that stuff was out of reach, even
Yeah.
if you're just looking at pictures in Architectural Digest magazine, and those are all generally very expensive houses. You're like, oh man, I could never afford that. But then you see people with normal houses, or people in your social strata that have that, and you're like, oh, maybe I can afford that. Maybe I can start introducing some of this into my life.
Hmm.
Absolutely. And,
Right.
I think, the uniqueness of some of the modern designs that we definitely produce, I think it attracts more people just 'cause it's something they haven't really seen before. We have projects where, we've gotten, people from like New York who actually reached out to us, oh man, I've never, seen like this, nothing like this before. And then, we have actually a tiny home community that we do in Arizona right now, modern design. I think that's where, people are really, embracing this uniqueness. I think you get tired of just seeing, these neighborhoods, especially production homes and all of these cookie cutter designs, and, everything is about profit.
Mhm.
And obviously when you do something unique and modern, it's not really necessarily the most budget friendly. It can be, but because it's unique and it's a one-on-one design, it's a little bit more money involved. So, but I think people are accepting that and being more okay with going that route.
Mhm.
We have a bit of an interesting situation right now. I haven't asked permission to use their name, but we're working for a national production builder, just strictly their Houston division right now, to freshen up their exterior designs. They have a whole stable of plans that they just build and repeat. That's the model for production builders, but they actually found themselves missing out on opportunities for new neighborhoods because the developers were not accepting their current exterior designs. So they have their own in-house department, but they've kind of honored us by giving us a chance to kind of create a fresh new look for them.
That's awesome. What are some things that have kind of been um, popular over the last several years? I'm thinking things that we see that are kind of overdone that I'm tired of doing. Things like a white painted brick and all black windows and things like that. I mean, so talking about trends coming and going, are y'all seeing less request for that kind of stuff, or are you still getting requests for that? I mean, do y'all feel like some of these things are still there or on the way out?
I hope it's on the way out.
Me too.
The white, white brick, black accent, everything. I mean, it's beautiful, but when every third, fourth house now is doing that, it's going to be dated very quickly. And I think everybody's going to look back and say, oh, remember 2020s? When,
Right.
It's like, oh gosh.
Blame HGTV for that.
Right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
We still
part
get a
of it.
lot of it, but I think it is on the downslide probably.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, you have to think about it though, from a consumer perspective. You have to consume, right? You're not the one creating, and so if that's what's being fed to you through the media and the different inspirations, maybe it's up to us as the design community to put out even just conceptual sketches. It doesn't have to be something that's realized, but to say, hey, there's other ideas out there. Give them some inspiration that's not just the same old.
Right.
And different. I know you mentioned the brick, but I have a lot of clients who have been going with the natural stone. So we've been trying to. I have plenty of the white and black homes or whatever, but I definitely try to insert color and mixture of materials wherever possible. And then a lot of times budget is always the primary factor when it comes to these things. So you have to kind of figure out how to have a nice mixture of materials, but also try to keep everything together.
We're seeing more natural brick selections come back in our projects. Lighter tones, no red brick, no build a red brick, but some lighter tones, neutrals, grays, tans, taupes, etc. Versus just all the painted white.
Yeah, I was joking about the white painted brick, but we actually just redid our 1950s ranch with white painted brick. But I had pink brick with pink mortar before.
Right.
There you go.
So the white, and we didn't paint it. We did a masonry paint called Roma Bio, which painting brick is not really a good thing because it can seal it. It doesn't breathe. So the Roma Bio paint allows moisture to pass through it. It breathes. But we did the white painted brick to get rid of the pink brick.
Exactly.
But we also mixed in some other materials. So we did a wood siding mix with that, some stained wood to go with the white brick to soften it up. And I think the mix of materials is really big. Like almost all the houses that we're doing now have generally at least two, generally three exterior materials.
Yeah, no, seeing a lot of the mix. My home is a mix of actually red brick, funny
Okay,
enough,
sorry.
and
No
it's good.
offense.
It's good. No. Well, it's funny, because the inspiration, and so this is kind of how I approach design and how I'd love to see just more people around the city is thinking about like, where is your home located? Obviously, if it's out in the middle of the suburbs and there's not a lot of history there, then it might be a little hard to draw on that. But within the Rice military area of Houston, that was used as a World War training camp. It was a very much industrialized area. The rail line goes through there. Lots of blue collar, lots of warehouses and things, and that's really where we took the inspiration for
Nice.
it. And so a lot of times people will be walking by and they'll say this must have been a remodel, right? You took this old existing building. I'm like, no, this is a new build, and they're just shocked
Yeah.
because it's like, oh, I thought it was always here.
Well, that's a compliment. in my
Yeah,
opinion.
yeah,
That's-
and I definitely take it that way, and I think that's kind of the idea though is that you look at your context, right? Look at the surroundings and see what would be appropriate here, and you can obviously take in inspiration from other places, but is stucco the most appropriate material for Houston? Probably not. I mean, we all walk around the neighborhood, you'll see scaffolding and mold, and you're like,
Right.
maybe brick is a better choice, right? But I think
Exactly.
it's kind of how do you use the materials in a way that's going to be respectful of where it's at, and then in a new way, in a new modern interpretation.
And there's a lot of options for siding nowadays. It's kind of frowned upon, the cheap 4-inch siding that you see, on the lower income homes. But, James Hardy has the higher end products or whatever, the architectural shingles and stuff of that nature. So we've been blessed to, figure out creative ways of how to rearrange that, different sizes all on the same house. But you do it in a way where it all kind of blends in and it creates a nice composition
Yeah.
altogether.
And sometimes just mixing the sizes of the same material
Exactly.
or mixing the lap, right? Like you can
Yes.
use the same siding and do a section of 4 inch and a section a 6 inch.
Exactly.
And they also sell the same material in like an 8 and a 10. So you can mix sizes and create some interest that way as well.
Mm-hmm.
And still stay within budget.
Right.
You know.
And even looking at things, different criteria more than just, the aesthetic, right? So what about durability? What about the ongoing maintenance? Am I going to have to repaint this every 5 years? And so I think there's a lot more consideration that's being given to that from homeowners and building owners in general. They're saying, I don't want to have to deal with this, especially, within the urban context, and you're building 3-4 stories, 4 is the new 3 now. So
Right.
like,
Yeah,
how are you going
exactly.
to get up there? And so when I look around some of these neighborhoods and I see, like you said, the cheap siding that's going to have to be refinished, it's like, how are you going to get scaffolding up there? How are it's going to be a big headache later on. And so I think, just being smart about, trying to choose materials that are appropriate in that way is a really important thing.
We've had a couple of episodes with that are focused on home maintenance. And one of the things that we have talked about is that people just don't get out and check the things. And especially if it's a 3 or 4 story townhome or single family home, whatever. It's hard to get out and check those. People don't own a 20+ foot ladder or scaffolding or whatever it is they need to check the caulking around their windows and to their stucco condition and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's up to us as design professionals, builders, to use products that they're not going to have to maintain as much. There's always going to be
Right.
some level of maintenance, right? But helping them think through, is this something that I can keep up with or not? Or maybe I should consider using something else that's a little more low maintenance, right?
Mhm.
Absolutely. No, and you're right. I think the average person, doesn't realize that, we're in Houston and the heat and the sun just beats up your house, So regardless, even the materials that aren't really require a lot of maintenance, that sun is just a whole nother level, especially if it's direct, especially with the amount of sunlight we receive per year. So that's just something you have to be mindful of, especially with the plumbing stacks coming out your roof, the caulking around that. That's like the biggest thing people don't understand. 6 months to a year is about the most you could just like let that go.
Yeah.
After that, you have to get somebody up there that's kind of check around those things, and caulking wears out. So that's just, we always try to make our clients mindful of that. It's just like, hey, once this house is done, because we actually, are part of the process throughout construction. So we try our best to, we even do 6-month reminders to our clients. Hey, check your caulking around your house, the windows,
Yeah.
you'd be surprised. People don't even know that you have to do that. They think it's just, once they're done, they're done.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and I've had this exact same conversation with a few people here, but it's kind of like 50 years ago, 60 years ago, people were just more involved in doing things around the house and their property. They would get out, they would paint their own house, they would do their own maintenance. It's same thing with cars. People used to work on their own cars a lot more, and now we tend to just hand that off to somebody else.
True.
And part of it is things have just got more complicated.
Right.
But a big portion of that is we're just busy. We don't have time. We don't make the time. We don't place an importance on it. And so I think that maintenance issues that would have gotten caught 50 years ago by my dad or grandpa aren't getting looked at today. So
Agreed.
having a company to do home maintenance for you. We've had Goodsmith on here a couple times. Eric Klein that owns Goodsmith. They have a great service where they come out on set intervals and they check all the caulking.
Yeah.
They do those things.
Highly recommend it.
Yeah. So if you're if you're a busy professional, don't try to do it yourself.
Right.
Hire somebody to do it for you, because it is important and it is going to cause problems for you long term if you don't do it.
Most
Absolutely.
definitely.
We're on a job right now. In fact, we're in the middle of trying to fix it, where somebody had a 4-story stucco townhouse in the Heights, and no maintenance was done at all on the stucco for the last 20 years.
Oh man.
And all the stucco had to come off the front of the house. All the framing was rotten. The engineers having to figure out how to fix the framing because it's cantilevered out and the trusses are rotted out. And so it's like, how do we even fix it?
Oh
Wow.
man.
And it's going to cost $40,000-$50,000 just to fix the framing so the house doesn't fall down. And most of that could have been prevented by just maintaining the stucco.
Right.
I had a job recently in the Upper Kirby area where a window installer, I guess just put the wrong nail in the wrong place as far as when he installed the windows, and I guess it punctured a hole within a stucco, and it was a very, very small hole, but over time you could just tell all the brown streaks are going through behind the wall, and And, it costs the homeowner like 10 to 15K, to remove that whole little section just because of just the insulation of that window.
Yeah.
So the stucco was put on properly, but the window got, kind of messed it up. And so that's the only thing that sucks about certain materials. You have to be aware of, these type of problems that could occur, depending on how things are installed.
We kind of got off the design track a little bit.
Oh, sorry.
No, that was me taking it that way. Anything else kind of on exteriors I want to talk about? Any other trends that you're currently seeing or getting a lot of requests for, or things that are popping up?
Something that kind of ties into the maintenance issue, looking at the wood slats here in the studio. We have a lot of clients that are inspired by Austin Modern, California Modern, et cetera, dry climates, a lot of exposed wood on the exterior. And we, try to educate them that that is just not the thing to do here unless you have the budget for, a great composite product that gives the look, or an
Mm.
e-pay or something that can withstand. If your budget is cedar, don't clad the outside of the home with
Yeah.
wood.
Absolutely.
Unless you like the rustic.
Right. Yeah.
We've had people recently, guess for its industrial modern look, it's corrugated metal. We've been playing with that on some of our products or whatever. Actually have a whole house all in corrugated metal, and the client was just in love with that look, and and maxed it out to the fullest. So, but I'm not huge with the whole house being corrugated metal, but if anything, I would like to kind of play with it and have a mixture of materials with it. But
Yeah.
that's definitely something that I've got a couple of requests on recently.
Yeah.
We're doing a little kind of a series of cottages for a family out in the Hockley area. So it's going to be all kind of connected by a boardwalk, and each of those is actually going to be with a corrugated, or not corrugated, standing seam metal roof that's going to go down and then continue down the sides, almost like
Oh,
the
man.
Scandinavian looks.
Oh,
And
right.
we're
That's
seeing a
pretty
lot
cool.
more of kind of requests for that style of modern, very like embracing of nature, and really simplistic but warm materials. So I'm excited to see where that one goes.
That sounds interesting. I agree about the Scandinavian. We're seeing more of those influences as well. The Japandi, I've heard it called the
Yep.
Japanese
Oh, yeah.
Scandinavian combo. It's a good look. It's a great
Yeah.
look.
We're actually doing a interior build out for a nail salon with a Japandi
Okay.
interior style.
Very
Pretty
nice.
cool. And then recently, there's a roof product that's solar panels integrated. So, on a high end budget, we've, instead of having these huge solar panels on the roof, I'm not really a big fan of. I think Tesla actually has a product or whatever where
Mhm.
they integrated solar panels within the roof shingles. So we've got a couple of requests on the high end products for that.
Yeah, I would say, just kind of piggybacking on that, just the whole idea of the sustainable products and systems. Yeah, and I feel like COVID was probably the kind of tipping point for that, where people. I mean, you look back and COVID hit and everybody's at home and they're like, I can't go to the store to get bread. I got to figure out how to make it, right? And so
Right.
now they're like, I want to be self sufficient. I want to have the solar. I want to have the water. I want to have my garden. Like that's a huge one for several people that we've been talking with. Is well, can I have a really good landscaped area with edible fruits and vegetables and trees rather than just a manicured lawn? Like, why do I want to have to go out and water and have a chore when I could, do these things? So it's kind of extending, mixing the interiors and exteriors is a big part of it as well.
And I piggyback on COVID. I think that also, besides the garden area, I think people also have been a request and just making sure that they could truly entertain in the house. Now that when the world's kind of shut down and nobody could really interact, became a thing. Like how do I entertain? How do I enjoy myself inside the home?
Mhm.
So we've been really focusing on people, being able to truly do that, function inside their house.
That's a great transition into my next topic, which is floor plans. Like you said, entertaining floor plans are still very popular. People want to have people over now. 1940s, 50s, 60s, 70s, all the rooms were generally very segmented. You'd have like a dedicated formal living room, formal dining room, smaller family room, smaller kitchen, walls between all of those. But here for the last 15 years at least, everything's just been getting more and more open, like fewer interior walls dividing spaces. And one thing that I commented on last week was that feels fantastic, but the problem is there's nowhere to put your furniture, there's nowhere to hang artwork, and it can be very noisy, right?
Yeah.
Right.
What do y'all think about that? And do you see any move back toward having a little bit more segmentation in the spaces?
We're seeing it a little bit. We're definitely still getting requests for formal dining rooms that feel like a different and special place, but yet aren't as enclosed as they have been previously. Uh, we've actually got a project right now where the couple are art collectors, so they want modern open concept, but they have needs. So, it has a long, generously sized gallery that runs left to right the whole length of the house that will be their primary art display. So, take those things into considerations and try to make sure we get plenty of net glass, natural light, open concept, but still providing for the needs.
Yeah, as far as a dining room, I'm not a real big fan of traditional dining room. Is from all of the conversations I've had with hundreds of clients. It's the most expensive room that's used 3 or 4 times a year. That traditional family style where people actually remove themselves from the living room to eat, it's just not really common these days. So, but no, you also get tired of seeing the dining room in the middle between the kitchen and the living room. That kind of gets played out so many times.
Right.
Yes.
So nowadays, it's having a dining room in a situated area, but it's still kind of connected to everything else. So that's kind of the trend that we've kind of been trying to do, where it's still a nice dining room area, but it still feels a part of the living room, dining room, but not in the middle of it.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, it's funny because with my commercial background, we see a lot of these trends kind of start in the commercial spaces. So, like in the corporate office, obviously everybody was cube farms and open office everything, and everybody hated it. Why? Because it was noisy. You couldn't have private, all the same reasons, right? And so, seeing the shift within the corporate space to more of a flexible type of, choose your own adventure, so to speak. It's like you have a place for focus work that is maybe like a little phone booth, or you have a place for small meetings and informal meetings and things like that. And that is really similar to what I'm seeing on the residential side now. And they're kind of following by a couple years there. But flexible spaces is really, I think, where things are going to be going. Like I don't want a full wall, but I also don't want no walls. So maybe we put it up and, put a barn door or some curtains or something where we have switchable, smart glass where we can push a button and it goes to frosted. And now I feel like it's private, even though there's somebody on the other side of it. And giving people a lot more flexibility. Because I think that's another product of COVID where it's like, well, I have a bedroom and this is now my office. Well, why don't I have a Murphy bed? And then it can be both without it feeling like I'm stuffed in on top of the mattress while I'm trying to, get my work done.
Yeah, we did a job we finished last year where we were doing the design, and the client was like, I don't know if I want my dining room here or here or here. And so we just left it open. We didn't put any chandeliers in. It was all recessed lighting that, could kind of work in any area. And they said, we'll just decide after we move in where we want the dining room to be. And so we made the floor plan flexible to where they could have, that could be a dining area, or it could be a seating area, or it could be a little bar area or whatever. And then if the next buyer of the house didn't want to use it for that purpose, they just switch the furniture around, right?
Yeah.
So they intentionally wanted to make the space very flexible.
Yeah. The flexibility, I think, probably goes hand in hand with, as the population is aging, we're going to have like 1 in 6 will be over 65 in the next couple of years. And then it'll increase from there. And so when you think about the whole concept of aging in place, like how do you make a space that's good for you right now with, maybe a young family and you've got kids and then they're going to graduate and go off. Well, now what do? Now you have 4 or 5 bedrooms that nobody's in. Well, let's think about that in a way that we can make it flexible. Maybe turn something into a hobby room or, offices, workout rooms, things like that, and really give it, second life.
Exactly.
I think more recently, we've had a lot of clients who definitely request like the game room. Like we're real big with having a game room kind of overlooking living rooms. You see that a lot in a lot of modern homes, and just a lot of floor plans as of recent. And we've had a lot of clients who complain about noise. So that's kind of something that we try to take into consideration. We still like the second floor kind of being open, and when you walk up to the second floor, you don't really walk into like walls and hallways. So figuring out creative ways you could do that, but still reduce the noise transfer when the kids playing in the game room versus when the parents are entertaining downstairs. So that's definitely been a design challenge that we've had to deal with recently.
Agreed. As a father of 3 teenagers, I encourage people to kind of stay away from that open 2-story foyer to game room, living room setup.
It looks nice,
Yeah,
but function is
it's right for certain people, not right for others. So
And that's where something, just even a simple thing of like a really heavy interior drapery can really cut down on the noise
That's
transfer
smart.
and things like that.
That's smart.
It doesn't have to be an expensive solution.
right.
I've had more people like seemingly thinking longer term than they used to, where they're thinking, whereas before people were coming to us and saying, I have to have all these things for my little, 3 and 4 and 5-year-old kids. They're not thinking, hey, those kids are not going to be that age too much longer, right?
Yeah.
Now I'm finding more clients are actually thinking longer term. They're saying, you know what, these kids aren't going to be this age that much longer. Let's not build this one special room just for 5-year-olds. Because honestly, by the time the house is finished being designed and built,
Right.
they're not going to be 5 anymore. Now they're going to be 7 or 8.
Right.
So I think people are, at least in my experience, are taking a little bit more practical approach to what they want to include in the house.
Mhm.
And then aging in place, like, piggybacking off of that, one thing that we've been trying to focus on is making it easy to transition to like 88 bathrooms for a home.
Mhm.
Exactly.
So I tell my clients that, hey, you're not there yet, but if this is your forever home, let's make it easy for you to install a hand grab bars, or the zero transition showers, or make sure that if you do have to have a wheelchair, the bathroom is big enough where you be comfortable, and you're not doing a major remodel to make that work.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when people are, at a certain age and they're doing custom homes with us, I always try to emphasize that, especially if they're master bedrooms on the second floor. I'm also thinking about, okay, hey, if you possibly want an elevator in the future, how do we make that work now? Where you don't have to install that right now, but I want to make it where it's possible to do that in the future.
It's stacks of closets for you, so you can put it in there.
Exactly.
I will give my shameless plug of elevator. Absolutely. We have one in our
Yes.
home and worth every penny.
Oh yeah. Hands
Put it
down.
in from day one and you will use it.
Yes. Okay. I always encourage people to let us design it regardless of whether they will put it in or not, because it's just great storage. I mean,
Yeah.
you have a generous sized storage closet on each floor.
Yeah.
It's a win-win.
And they're not that expensive to do a basic elevator these days. Like you can put in a basic 2 or 3 story residential elevator for $30,000
Yeah.
or less, $25,000 to $30,000.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now you can spend a lot if you want to. We're about to install one that's a $250,000 elevator.
Oh man.
It's going to be awesome. But we also just did one that was $25,000.
Man.
And so, and that was for an older client who had a second floor master suite, and she wanted the master suite on the second floor.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so, for $30,000, she has no access issues.
Yeah. And even thinking about, if other family members end up moving in with you, right? Because, when we're thinking about the aging population, like who's going to take care of those folks? And maybe you're going to be a multifamily household, and as the culture kind of shifts to that mindset, what does your house look like? Do you need to start planning for, mother-in-law suite or even like a little casita or something on the property room? How do we start to accommodate more than just self here and now?
And I think storage is the biggest thing that people just overlook. I bought my house 5 years ago. I haven't designed it yet. That's my next phase. But it was 4-bedroom, 3-bath house for me and my wife, and we have 3 kids now. But you'd be surprised how storage just kind of gets smaller and smaller by the year.
Mm-hmm.
So and nobody wants. I hate when my wife asks me to go into the attic. It's never a fun, experience. Every Christmas, got to drag Christmas tree down. So I try to find creative ways, especially when we have 2-story plans of creating walk-in access, storage, within the attic. It's not necessarily a room that you have to build out, but depending on how you do your roof lines, we could create this volume where this could be great space, great storage space, and it's something where you open the door to get to it.
Right.
So that's one thing I always try to be mindful of my clients. Hey, let's make sure that we have enough storage for you to, for 10 years from now.
Yeah.
You got plenty of little nooks and crannies to, to kind of put things away if you want to.
Well, attics, now that we're doing mostly spray foam houses here in Houston, and those attics are either semi-conditioned or we're actually putting a supply air duct in the attic.
Smart.
Those are viable storage spaces,
Absolutely.
whereas the unconditioned Texas attic of the past, where it was like mine right now, it's 130 degrees in there.
Right.
I don't want to store things in there because it's not going to hold up well to the heat. But with the new energy codes that are in place, it's kind of making everybody, not everybody, but most people are doing spray foam insulation now, and those attics are way more comfortable and actually usable now.
How do you feel about spray foam throughout the entire home?
I prefer it, and
Prefer
that's what we're mostly using.
Okay.
Yeah, I know that we work with Toner Kirsting on all of our projects. He's been on the podcast. more than anybody
Several
else.
times.
Semi co-host. And I
Right.
know that David, you work with Toner. Do you guys work with Toner at all?
Yeah, we used him on our house.
I've heard of him. I haven't used him.
Okay. So kind of his standard specs are doing spray foam on the whole house.
Okay.
So that's kind of why we've transitioned to that.
Okay. Yeah, and the better energy. You know, when you're doing modern homes, you'd have these large windows. One of the concerns is how much energy are we losing throughout the home?
Mm-hmm.
You know, so spray foam with the double pane windows. That's kind of something that we try to propose to our clients. Even though we have these large windows, we can still make the house pretty energy efficient.
And if you have the ability, when it comes down to the things that we can control within the design component is, which side of the building are the windows going to be on? Can we start
Smart.
to move them towards the north side where we don't get all the heat gain?
Smart.
Maybe minimize sizes or, give it an angle, maybe shift the direction of the house if we can. Obviously,
Exactly.
it depends a lot on the building site.
And yeah,
Right.
exactly.
One of the things that we touched on in our first season where we talked about planning a successful project is getting your architect, designer, builder, everybody on board, possibly even before you go buy a lot, if you
Yes,
can.
please.
Absolutely.
I mean, that
Helps.
Right.
that's really the best way to do it. Like, don't go out and buy the property first, and then go ahead and put your team together, and then and get that team to help you pick the right lot.
Yes.
Because we might look at it and say, this is for the style of house that you want, for what you want to spend. This is a terrible location.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. We do feasibility studies as a regular service that we offer just to, we'll take a look at the survey, we'll go out there and, maybe have 2 or 3 different properties. And this goes for residential and commercial, just saying like, will what you want fit here in the ways that you think it will? And sometimes we'll find like, oh, well, did you know that you don't have utilities out in this rural area? Or did you know, the neighbor next door is actually building something, and we looked at the permits and they're going to be, 4 stories high. Do you really want, to put your low lying roof house here where you're going to be completely enclosed by neighbors? And just, looking at things that maybe most people wouldn't even think of.
Yeah, there's a power line here, and you
Yeah.
can't be that close to the
Yeah,
power
exactly.
line.
I was just going to
Yep.
mention
We
that,
run into
man.
that a lot. Yes.
I've had to learn that the hard way.
Me too.
A project I did in the Galleria area, we were literally completely framed, getting the frame inspection done. And I guess a neighbor called in for some reason on Centerpoint. Centerpoint came out there, and we were 6 inches too close to the transformer.
Mm-hmm.
So we had to either move the power pole or reframe that portion of the house. So it was easier to move the power pole, but it was a $20,000
Mhm.
Right.
bill.
Mm-hmm.
So that's never. So now, that's kind of one of the first things.
And where's the power?
Where's the
Full
power
circle.
line? Where are the
Exactly.
transformer lines? And
Yeah. So, some of the cities require that for permitting. So Bel Air, Westview, some of the other smaller towns require a power line profile to show that you're
Yes.
meeting those clearances.
Mhm.
Yeah.
We just recently ran into that. I was not aware until just a few months ago on a project that they were requiring that now. I think it's very smart
Yeah.
rather than finding
Honestly,
out after the fact.
Houston should require that too. I mean,
Absolutely.
everyone
They
should
should.
require it because it would save instances like that where
Yeah.
you're spending 20 grand or more to make that happen.
And you
Right.
feel good because you're not in the utility easement, but that has nothing to do with the closeness of the power line.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
2 different situations. And Centerpoint and City of Houston are 2 different entities.
They don't talk to each other.
No.
Right.
They
They don't
don't.
care.
So yeah, I seen your post and I'm like, oh man, I had flashback.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
I require our, especially, well, if we have 25-foot backyards, it's not, you don't have to worry about it. But
Right.
some of these, townhomes and stuff, I request my clients from day one, hey, let's order this power line profile survey.
Yes.
I need to be prepared. This is in case Centerpoint gives me a call. I want to be able to show the diagram that, hey, we're compliant.
Yeah,
do the same.
it's funny because we were in an almost similar situation when we were looking for property to build our home on, and there was this little sliver of a land. I think it was somebody else's backyard that they just replatted, and we're like, oh, architect, I can do something with this. And it was like, it's going to be an 18-foot wide house, but then we looked at the power line, and I was like, OSHA won't let us get close enough to actually construct it with the worker being that close to a power line and the transformer. And so we went
Right.
through, the due diligence and feasibility and went and talked to Centerpoint, and they kind of threw up their hands and said, well, we can't help you. Like, we can't do a shutdown of the line to let you do like a prefab, crane it in. We can't move it. We can't do this, can't do that. I'm like, well, we're not buying it,
Right.
And somebody else ended up buying it several years later, and they poured the foundation, and then it just sat
Wow.
for months and months and months. And I was like, they're having to deal with
Yeah,
that power line issue
exactly.
now. And eventually it did get built, but
We're starting to require the same thing with profile surveys of the power lines in certain situations, and I explained to clients that that aerial easement shown on the survey means absolutely nothing. It's
And
I
then
don't know why we even refer to that, but
like you said, we always try to inform our clients, before you purchase your land, let us look at the property at the minimum. We don't even charge for that, especially if we feel like we're gonna get the job. We had a client in our colony. Gas lines are everywhere in
Mhm.
our colony. That's just like, Exxon just kind of,
Yeah, the transmission lines. Yeah.
oh man. And so anyways, we have a client who's trying to do a dance studio out there in our colony, brand new development, and the gas line goes through the right in the middle of our property. She's already purchased it, so we're in, to the process. But it just sucks because, her idea of the project, what it was going to be, is just completely different now. There's 25-foot easements on each side of the property. So out of, maybe 20,000 square feet, she probably could only use like 8,000 of it because the property line, the gas line divides the property in half, and you can't even put concrete on top of this.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. So definitely get your design team on board. Your design team and your builder, as many people as you can involved early to help you catch those kinds of things.
Absolutely.
So sometimes there's other ways to get around that. So Brinn, you mentioned possibly shutting down the power lines during a period of time.
right.
They will do that. So we're doing one in the museum district to where they came in and de-energized a section of lines to allow us to put scaffolding up on the backside of a building.
Man.
And I think it cost $5,000 for them to do that. They come and put some temporary wires to jump it off to another section of power lines. But having your team on board with you that has that knowledge that can be done or that can't be done can save you a bunch of money buying a property that you're stuck with, and now you can't resell it because everybody else is thinking about that even though you didn't.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Another concern that we have to deal with in Houston, obviously, is flood zone. That's everywhere almost. And then it's since Harvey, 500 years, just as important now. And so I try to educate our clients. All flood zone areas aren't the same. You're in Maryland, we might be 9 feet in there. But you're a little bit further out, we might be 3 feet in there. So just kind of being aware. Like again, that's another thing that you come to us before you purchase a property. We can kind of at least educate you as best as we can.
Yeah.
On stuff like that as well.
There was actually one positive change yesterday that I found out. I'm not sure if you guys got this news already, but the city of Houston put some pretty bad detention requirements in place for properties. But as of yesterday, properties between 15,000 square feet and an acre get an automatic credit of 9,000 square feet worth of coverage. So that actually removes the requirement for detention from a lot of projects. So in fact, we had one that the client was going to have to do $40,000 or $50,000 worth of underground storage tanks.
Yes.
We permitted it that way. And then I got that news and immediately I called the engineer. I was like, redraw it. We're going to re-permit it and
change it out.
Take that off because it saves the client $50,000.
Yeah.
I have one in permitting right now. When we get out of here, I'm
I'll
about to make some phone calls. Yeah, absolutely.
Did you hear that?
I'd heard that it might be a possibility. We have 2 under construction right now with the same builder.
Yeah.
That was hoping to be able to save his clients that cost and was kind of waiting for the definite answer, but I did not hear that it was confirmed.
BEC emailed me yesterday and said this went through.
That's good.
So let your clients know. So we had 2 clients that said that had put their projects on hold because that was going to be a big expense.
Man.
And I emailed them and they said, okay, let's get moving forward again. So
that's exciting news.
But again, that's one of those things that if you go buy a property that's 15,001 square feet or 15,000 instead of 14,999, and you didn't know that requirement was there, you just cost yourself another $50,000. Well, before this change,
we've had to break that news to clients a couple of times after the fact that we're not aware when they came to us with their property already purchased. So, yeah, it's a big hit.
Yep. Last thing on floor plans, I wanted to touch on real quick. Are there any other spaces in floor plans that you've either been getting more requests for, more dedicated spaces, or less requests for? So I'm thinking of, during COVID, everyone wanted for sure one study, but sometimes they wanted 2 studies because both people were working at home. We got a lot of requests for that at the time, and now it's kind of gone away a little bit. We're still getting hey, we need at least one.
Right.
So anything like that where you're seeing more requests for certain spaces?
Prep kitchens,
Prep kit, yeah.
dirty pantry, prep kitchen, spice kitchen, whatever you want to refer to it as, has become huge. We're doing some form of them in virtually every project now,
Hmm.
it seems. And they can vary from just some additional countertop in the pantry to, really a full-on second kitchen with
Yeah.
with all appliances, et cetera. I would say that's the biggest thing we're seeing.
Kids study areas like kids study nooks. I think that's something that on the second floor usually that's something that people has been requesting. And now that the husband and the wife, tends to work at home nowadays since COVID, and a lot of companies still give a lot of their workers, employees, that option of working at home. So it's like I'm in office 2 times, 3 times of the week. I'm at home 2 days, so I need a place to work. And a lot of times, husband and wife don't want to be in the same room, phone calls, Zoom calls, or whatever.
It's
So
not practical sometimes,
so
right?
now we're not necessarily doing in full offices in homes now. It's like several study nooks throughout the home. And that's kind of been a trend that we've been noticing as of late.
I would
Yeah,
agree.
that's second on the study nook, or just small area. Maybe it has a, like you said, a barn door or something you can
Yeah.
slide on. Now I'm enclosed and okay, and open it
Right.
up. But hobby rooms,
Yeah.
something where
Yeah.
we can go have the creative, messy stuff where you don't have to put it away all the time, and you have big tables and shelves, and everybody can kind of get their modeling, and whoever who knows what they do,
Right.
but that's been kind of a popular thing that people have been asking for.
I've done a speakeasy in the house.
Right.
It's pretty cool little design I
Like a
have.
hidden door.
A hidden door and hidden is in a wine room underneath the staircase, and then one of my wine rooms is a hidden door that leads to the speakeasy. It's a mid-level study that I'm doing in Pearland, and it's about 8 or 9 feet of space underneath the study. And instead of doing a crawl space, I'm trying to convince the owner, let's build it out and do something cool with it. First, I was just thinking storage, but they were like, "Oh man, well we like speakeasy. I was like,
Right.
let's do your own speakeasy inside your house."
That's
So
cool.
so that was pretty cool. And she sheds. That's something I've been getting a lot of requests. You hear man caves a lot, but I've had a lot of wives who are like, "Hey, I want my own space too." So how do I, give the balance of a man cave and the wife to have their own personal space as well? So we've been finding creative ways to, for both parties to be happy. A lot of times, architects we're marriage counselors.
Definitely.
A lot of times. So
and,
we have
and builders. Well, y'all counsel them, and then you hand them off to us. We have to
Exactly.
continue it.
Yeah.
So, I go, we want, obviously, the wife leads the projects, but, I always try to make sure that the husband gets taken care of some way, somehow, and it's finding a balance with that, so sometimes it's easier said than done.
Yeah, I would say maybe the last thing on, the floor plan and just the layout of spaces is an integration of outdoor, rather than just having, here's the box of the house, then you have the yard and everything's over there. It's really more of an integrated approach where, it has a little balcony or a little porch, or, how can we open up the wall, and have like a sliding glass partition system and make it really truly indoor outdoor.
Yeah.
That's been really popular.
Let that 100-degree air into the
Yeah.
house and mess up your AC system and,
Right. Yeah.
and everything else. Yeah, we joke about that all the time. It's like all the clients want the big 16-foot sliding
Yeah.
doors for the 2 times a year that you're going to
Yeah.
open them.
Mhm.
But, we try to find, use the doors where, even if it's a 16 or 20-foot door and you have 4 or 5 panels, we make it where it's operable, at least 2 of the panels,
Mhm.
where that's more practical.
Right.
You still have an 8-foot opening, you still get all this natural light, but you're not really going to open this 20-foot, have this huge 20-foot opening, on a regular basis.
Mhm.
Now I'm doing one in the Riverside Terrace area where, again, the client, once we have kitchen, it's kind of a unique design. The kitchen is kind of in its own separate zone from the living and dining. It's very requests from the client, and we have sliding doors in front of the kitchen, but we have like a dining area outside of it where we have a mosquito screen system and screens to come down, so you kind of enclosed from the elements, but it's still hot.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So I'm curious to see how often she uses it. It's gonna be beautiful. Don't get me wrong when we're done, but I'm just curious to see how often she has this whole thing open like she plans on having.
Yeah. I like the idea that Brinn said of kind of integrating the spaces to where it's not like it's a rectangle where the house stops here and then the yard starts here. It's
Yeah.
like uh, how can we kind of wrap those spaces into each other,
Yes.
as so people feel like they can move indoors, outdoors,
Right.
and enjoy the space. I think when you have these two indoor outdoor segmented spaces, people maybe ignore the outdoor space. They're like, I don't want to go out there. Whereas if you kind of integrate the two, it kind of draws them out to that
Definitely.
area.
Absolutely.
Some of my favorite projects are when clients come to us and request an L shape, a U shape, a courtyard design, where we're really maximizing the amount of that exterior wall on outdoor spaces with, an interior courtyard plus the rear yard, possibly a front entry courtyard. It's even in our climate where you're not necessarily going out and using them, it's still a great feature to walk by in your air conditioning and, look out and see the nice fountain out in the courtyard or whatever it may be.
Absolutely. Take advantage of the land that you paid for.
Right. Exactly.
We recently had a client in the Bel Air area off of Chimney Rock who purchased a nice piece of property, probably 7,000 square feet land. I'm sorry, 8,000 square feet. And the problem is it's off a major thoroughfare. So it's a 25-foot setback. The lot is only 60 feet wide. We got 25-foot setback off the street and then another like 7, 8 feet because of the neighborhood. So, it's almost like a shotgun home, but in their mind, they was going to have this beautiful, huge home. But, now I'm only working with 30 feet of footprint. But I'm pretty proud of the project. It's actually about to go to permitting because, at first it's kind of like, oh man, this is horrible news to tell the client that, hey, you can't use half of your property because of the city order. But we was able to come and create with a design where that whole side of the house is all just beautiful outdoor landscape, pool, fire pit, landscape garden area. And we designed the house where it's views of that all throughout the house. So now it's like, oh man, like, this is horrible, but now it's like, I love what, what's going on now, as far as we didn't even think about, kind of having this indoor outdoor type flow. It's in a flood zone too, so that's the other catch. So it's 5 feet off the ground. But still, even with all that considered, the clients are kind of in love with the final product with it, because we turned a bad situation to good, just by introducing and educating them with other options,
Right.
to make it work. So
What last thing I wanted to touch on was alternative building products. So I wanted to ask if you guys have had any requests for people interested in building with things like ICF, concrete forms, or any kind of panelized systems, 3D printing, any of that kind of stuff. Y'all had any requests for any of that?
We had a SIPS project 2 years ago or so, I think, and it was new to us. I had always been just the conventional wood framing realm. It was interesting. The builder that attempted it after it was done said he would not do it again. I, I don't know whether it was an uneducated framer or what the exact situation was, but he kind of regretted it at the end.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the only recent one we've had.
I have an ICF home in our colony or whatever. It's unique. I had to do a lot of research on the details and how things go together and stuff of that nature. Obviously, the R values are tremendous. R30s,
Right.
R40s.
Yeah.
The problem is, you just lose. You don't realize how much space you lose. So
Yeah, the walls are 8 to 10 inches thick.
14 to 16 inches.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So and then you times two, so that's almost 2 or 3 feet of just wall that you have to kind of consider. So that's the biggest kind of, I guess, the situation the client had to kind of deal with as far as, hey, they wanted a certain square footage, obviously for budget purposes, but then it's like, hey, I've lost 2 or 3 feet all throughout the house. So we had to come up with creative ways to still make the spaces feel good, but stay within this square footage, range. So, but I mean, as far as uniqueness of the energy values and they were concerned about our colonies, the wind zone area,
Yeah.
stuff like that. So ICF it handles that both of those situations pretty well.
Yeah. It's also very, very quiet too.
Yes,
Like if
absolutely.
you're in an ICF house, it's very quiet. It's a very
Yes.
different experience.
Yes,
Mhm.
yes.
Similar kind of experiences here when I was designing my home, I had actually wanted to use metal insulated panels. So you just, pop them up like
Right.
Legos. It sounds great. I went out and, toured the manufacturer plant and all this, and then they stopped producing them after I issued the permit. I
Oh
was like,
man.
Okay.
okay, so I had to change the drawings, scramble to do all that. And, what I realized is that the learning curve, when you're dealing with things that people haven't dealt with, you really have to make sure you have a good team um, who is open minded, who is really into learning. Because if they expect to just do it the way they've always done, you're going to have problems. And so we were fortunate, through that the project, we were able to finally find, a team that was able to support us in doing things differently, using steel construction and, concrete floors and, all kinds of things where a lot of people might get a little scared off, if they're just doing the same old. So
Right.
something to think and keep in mind.
I think as some of those products get more use, like ICF, there weren't many people in Houston doing that
Mhm.
for quite a while. There's a guy, we're going to have him on the podcast pretty soon, who specializes in that. He's out of Galveston, but he's actually become a distributor for an ICF manufacturer here in our area, and he has his own crews that just do ICF. So
Nice.
if I, as a builder, want to hire him to just come in and do all my ICF framing, he'll do that.
Yes.
And so I went with him and Toner and a couple other guys, and we toured the New Dura ICF facility in Ohio, and it was a really good learning experience to see how all that goes together and learn about that technology.
And I think that's a good point, though, of having a local representative, for a manufacturer. Because, when we were looking into some of the products that I was considering, their closest person was in Virginia, or,
Yeah.
you definitely want to be able to, call somebody up on the phone and say, hey, can you come over and take a look at this? Is this correct? Especially when it's the first time for a lot of the people on the team to deal with it.
And then, when you're dealing with something new, I think most subs, unless you have, like you said, a representative of company, a larger company, less local, everything goes up 30-40%. When somebody hasn't seen something, even like those people who not really even involved, like, drywall, and, they want to increase their prices too.
Yeah.
Oh, this is a new house, I want to be sure that, I'm compensated well, just in case something goes wrong, because I'm not used to dealing with this type of product. So that's something that you have to kind of be aware of, and just like I said, make sure that the people you're using, they, at least have experience with it and knowledgeable with it, and or they've done it before, at the minimum.
It's also realizing there's a time penalty there too,
Yes.
because if it's the first time a crew's done that, or even if it's just a material that's not used very often here, it's going to take more time to put it up. And if you're a little bit short on materials, it's going to take some time to order those and wait for those to come in. If you're short 100 ICF blocks and you have to wait for them to be manufactured and shipped from Ohio,
Right.
or whatever,
It's not a hotshot delivery from Mono or
You can't just swap it out for
Exactly,
something else.
right.
Yeah.
So your upfront cost might be a little bit more, but obviously, you save in energy efficiency, in the long run for the most part.
yeah, the long-term cost of ownership and the comfort's going to be way better. But before you do something like that, also I think it's making sure that you're going to be there for a while. It's
Exactly.
Right.
It's not a 3-year home. It's going to be a 10 or 15 or 20 or 30-year home, right?
Exactly.
Well, any other things that you guys are seeing that you want to touch on or like to discuss today?
I
Comes
think
to
there's a lot of really good potential. I think where design, architecture, home building, and everything is going. I think the catalyst of kind of the COVID era, going behind us, and just people's awareness and appreciation for well-designed spaces is really going to take us where we need to go as a society, as a culture, of saying, where I reside, where I work, where I go out to eat and socialize, it matters, and the quality matters, and that experience matters. And so I think with people being aware and demanding that, we'll see a rise in the quality of design across the board.
Understand the codes or the regulations of whatever area we're working in, and then understand the potential that we have to kind of tie everything together, and make it unique. That's the benefits of using an architect to kind of guide you throughout this whole process.
I think people are more in tune. They're more turned on to good design now. Going back to what I was saying a while ago, just about Instagram and Pinterest and hows and all that kind of stuff. They're turned on to it. They see it. They want it. And so that actually makes your job and my job more fun, because we're not doing just the same old boring thing all the time, right? It's
Agreed.
something interesting to create. So we're able to be more creative.
Right.
Guys, thank you so much for coming out and joining me today. It's been great having you all. And
Thank you.
we'll do it again. I'd like to do this, once a year, to kind of talk about where things are going and what changes we're seeing in the industry. So I'm so happy that you're able to be a part of my first iteration of this.
Awesome.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you
Thanks for
very
having us.
much.
Thanks a
Absolutely.
lot. And thank you all for joining us on this episode of the Your Project Shepherd podcast. We hope to see you again soon.